My first guest has been a reporter for CNN, Fox, National Journal, and a number of publications. He's now the chief White House correspondent for CBS News. He's host of the Takeout podcast. He's the author of 4 books, and his latest is called Mr. Trump's Wild Ride. And I don't think anybody could disagree with that. Please welcome a longtime friend, Major Garrett. Major, great having you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Governor. It's great to be with you.
Well, there's a statement you made that I loved, and I wanted to start with this. You said writing this book put you in a state of dread concerning President Trump. So explain that one to start off with.
Well, whenever you're writing a book, you want to make sure you're getting the most important information, contextualizing it, and framing it for your audience. With President Trump, the state of dread comes with not knowing if what you're working on that day is going to be as important as what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes or the next 5 days or the next 5 months. And I don't need to tell you, Governor, it has been a wild ride that can be thrilling, it can be unnerving, it can create great sense of anticipation and anxiety. I live with those emotions as every White House reporter does day in and day out. And at some point, when you're writing a book about the first 18 months of a presidency, you have to say, stop. This is what I'm going to focus on. This is what's going to be the narrative or the tale or set of stories that will best explain what has happened and why. That sense of dread was, am I getting the right emphasis? Am I picking the right moments? You're never 100% sure about it, but I feel good about the final product.
I thought the book was very honest and raw and forthcoming, but at the same time, it was not a got-ya book. It was not designed, at least from a reader's perspective, to be, here's all the salacious tales that I've been able to uncover, and I'm going to try to expose all my colleagues and everybody in the White House. Was that an intentional approach?
Yeah, that's why it's bombing commercially.
Well, it shouldn't be. It actually should be doing much better than some of those that I thought were vicious and, frankly, always filled with anonymous sources, which is incredibly frustrating to me. You didn't do that. You had a book that is upfront, very clear, and I thought a pretty objective approach to looking at the Trump White House from the standpoint of someone who sits in the front row of that press briefing.
I appreciate that appraisal, and there are a couple of things I really prioritized in the book. One, look, the president has asked an important question. What is journalism and what is its value? He does this in a very aggressive way, too aggressive for my taste, as you would expect.
Sure.
But it's an important question, and so I can't answer that in totality, Governor, but what I can do is give an example. And look, I've used unnamed sources in my reporting career, oftentimes quite fruitfully. But I wanted in this book to avoid that temptation and avoid that trap, if you will, and contrast what is oftentimes the only journalism that most people consume for one where everything is on the record. As you know from looking at the book, everybody's named, everyone's quoted, everyone's title is there. Not because that's the only way to cover the story, but I thought it was the best example of how to verifiably cover this story. The other thing is, I don't hate on this president. I don't love on this president. I describe things that he fairly and accurately describes as accomplishments, and I describe things that have created tremendous controversy and undermined some of his own initiatives and proposals. And I try to call them, as any umpire would, as fairly and as accurately as possible. And I guarantee you, I was being a bit glib, but this book is not selling, Governor. And the reason it isn't is because it's not falling into one of two distinct Trumpian camps, which is, I love everything he does, no matter what he does, or I hate everything he does, no matter what he does. It seemed to me, as someone there day in and day out, these times call, at least in my world, for something that historians can look back onto, political scientists can, other people who are moving toward leadership roles in this country, and try to make sense of it all. Does it make sense of everything? No. But it gets a far way down that road, and I'm proud of that work.
Well, I think you should be proud of it. I'm going to say to our viewers, I hope they read the book, because I think it's one of the best, if not the best book from the insider's perspective. And I say that without really knowing what you think of President Trump. which is the greatest compliment that I can give to you as a journalist, is I don't actually know what you think. And I've always said that if I read a story or watch a story and I don't know what the writer or the broadcaster has as his own personal point of view, that's journalism. If when I read it, immediately I know exactly where that person's coming from, that's opinion. That's not journalism. That's advocacy. And this is why I found your book very unique among the books that have been talking about the president's tenure so far. Objectively, what would you say has been the greatest accomplishment that he has been able to get done as a president?
Well, I don't know if I can say the greatest, but I guarantee you there
Whatever
are
is
three or
huge.
four things. Yeah, 3 or 4 things that are going to be with this country, whether you love or dislike the Trump presidency, for a decade, maybe longer. One of them for sure, we can say with absolute clarity, the 2 Supreme Court judges and the numerous federal appeals court judges nominated and confirmed by this president are beginning to reshape the federal judiciary and will leave a Trumpian legacy on the federal courts for years, if not decades, to come. The other thing is the changed tax code, the way we tax corporations, the way we tax individuals, the way we have simplified the code will have ramifications economically and from a budgetary perspective for at least a decade, possibly longer. I write in the book that when even a voice like Bernie Sanders says, yes, we have got to make the middle class parts of the Trump tax cut permanent, you know something transformative has happened, not just as a matter of policy, but as a matter of politics. The president talks about deregulation with some frequency. I have an entire chapter devoted to that very dry and hard to sex up topic of deregulation. I didn't try to sex it up. I just tried to document it because I compared the president's inclinations there with the last deregulatory-oriented president in American history, Ronald Reagan. And I say Trump's record is better if you believe more is better. Obviously, some people on the left in Washington don't agree with that. But if you do, Donald Trump is already more successful, quote unquote, than Ronald Reagan, in large part because he had a much more cooperative and ideologically aligned Congress than Ronald Reagan did. I would say in those 3 areas at least, the effect of the Trump presidency has already been significant, and whether it's 1 term or 2 terms will be long-lasting.
Major, there's so much contention between the members of the esteemed Fourth Estate, the press, and people in the political class, especially those who are Trump supporters. And then we've seen it kind of boil up this past week with the BuzzFeed article that even Robert Mueller pushed back on, and then the Covington High School kids. Does the press have some responsibility in, and let me just be blunt, cleaning up its act and presenting itself with less passion and with a greater view toward being right than being first? Is that a legitimate criticism of the press that we have?
It's a legitimate criticism. Governor, long before the Trump era, I used to, with some frequency, give speeches, and there would be a very kind introduction of me, and I would come to the mic and I would say, that was so nice of you, but really what my introduction should read is as follows. Major Garrett is a semi-well-known figure in an industry with declining market share and record low credibility.
Next time I introduce you, that's exactly how I'm going to do it then. Fair enough.
2 facts. And the media has to own that. We have to ask ourselves relentlessly, are these things coincidental or are they reinforcing? And I think they are both. I mean, they're reinforcing and they're happening at the same time. We're losing market share and we're losing credibility. Those are not misaligned or unaligned or not related to one another. They're definitely related to one another. And there are aspects of social media and social conversation that are so immediate, that are so of the not just moment, but of the point of view moment, that things run roughshod over facts, context, history, and accuracy, and what a lawyer might call probity. Taking time to take the measure of the moment and explain it in a way that is not only useful, but accurate and memorable. And look, I'm in no position to lecture any of my colleagues. I can just do what I've done. But you were gracious enough in the intro to mention some of the places I've worked. I've been at a lot of different places with lots of different kinds of newsrooms.
Yeah.
And maybe I've taken the measure of the hostility either to the Washington Times or to CNN or to Fox or to CBS on board myself and armed myself with a sense, you know how to deal with that? Be right. Be accurate, be fair, be curious, be hard, be tough, but always be willing to criticize yourself, always be willing to hold yourself accountable, and you know what? Take your emotions out of it. We're not professionally entitled to emotions at all.
That is a speech maybe you should stand up and turn around and give to the colleagues in the press room at the White House. I know at least one person who goes to the podium regularly who would probably stand up and cheer. I think I know her fairly well.
Fairly well. Look, and Governor, you know this as well as I do. You've had a long-running relationship with reporters, national and local. You know the good ones.
Yeah.
You know the ones who don't have an agenda. You know the ones who are interested, curious, and there all the time. Part of it is time and grade. One of the reasons I've succeeded is because I've been around a long time. And I've been around enough stories, and people have watched what I've done and come to their own judgment about the believability of what I do. I still believe that matters. I still believe that's the most important dimension of journalism, being believable. I'm on television more than I'm in print. But what I want to do when I'm on television is if someone has the TV on and it's on mute, if they see me, they turn it up. Why? Because they know they can believe what I say. That is a delicate and important thing to possess. And it is accumulated not one story and one story only, but story after story after story after story. And if you don't have the same habits and you don't have the same methods, you're going to lose it. And that, I think, I try to tell younger reporters is an important part of creating not only an identity, but a believability.
Well, I want to say to all of our audience, Major Garrett's No Holds Barred book, Mr. Trump's Wild Ride, is available at Amazon, all other bookstores. You can listen to his podcast at takeoutpodcast.com. Follow him on Twitter at Major CBS. Major, so nice to have you here. I think the book is a real service to people who want an objective rather than a highly opinionated look at what's going on at the White House. And I commend you on a professionally written book and also on a very professional career that I think other journalists should follow and see your lead. Thank you very much for being with us.
Governor, thank you so much. Very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Watch Huckabee on Saturdays and again on Sundays at 8, 7 Central, only on TBN.